talk to you about what's happening in the tropics out in the Atlantic and get into a little more detail. Take a look on the map. This is a national satellite map, not the national satellite map, Atlantic satellite map. Henri, we've been talking about that. Henri has dissipated. It's now just an area of low pressure. It'll still produce some rough surf along portions of the east coast. What's left of Henri could bring some moisture to parts of the northeast United States later this weekend. Here is Hurricane Isabel out in the southern Atlantic. It's continuing to strengthen. It's now a Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 135 miles an hour. It is likely to continue strengthening. It currently poses no threat to land, but if it does pose a threat to land later this week, it most likely will be along the Caribbean islands first. But the models do not agree on the track of this storm. It's not as sure as Fabian was, so we're really going to have to watch it during the next couple of days. Charlie asked a very good question about that earlier in terms of where would it be threatening. We'll have to watch it during the next few days. That's a look at what's happening with the weather in the tropics. Now, here's what's happening in your neighborhood. All right, thank you. It's now been pointed out to me by my... Oh, there she goes. Robin is on her way to Toys R Us. We'll see what she does over there in just a couple of moments. That's it for weather. Back to you upstairs, Diane.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Well, there's a major new study out this morning that is a real wake-up call for American parents. It says that 1 in 5 American children are at risk of emotional problems or addiction. And in fact, there is new scientific evidence that the answer may not lie in drugs, but in religion and community, which could turn out to be an actual biological need of kids. All across the U.S., doctors say children with emotional problems are lined up at the door. An epidemic of anxiety, depression, 140% increase in childhood suicides since the 50s. In recent decades, drug therapy has seemed the answer. Everything from stimulants to antidepressants to vitamins to mood-altering drugs. But today, a brand new study says the prescription could in fact be something very close to home. Spirituality, a child's search for a place in society. The study, compiled by prestigious institutions like Harvard, Dartmouth, the YMCA, reveals that kids seem to be biologically hardwired to seek meaning in their life, namely God, and has strong community. So can it be that giving a child, for instance, religion, changes the child biologically, even genetically? Can it be that to deprive a child actually affects their physical future? Could this be the answer to medicine? Well, joining us now is Dr. Kathleen Kovner-Klein, a child psychiatrist from Dartmouth Medical School, the study's principal investigator, and Bill Stanczykiewicz, who is president and CEO of Indiana Youth Institute, a contributor to the study. I'm glad to have both of you with us. I want to start with a staggering figure, and Bill, I'll start with you, because 1 in 5 American children now at serious risk of emotional problems in their lives. It's really an epidemic. When did this start? When did this river start to sweep the kids away?
It's a significant number of children, Diane, across our country, and this is something that's developed over the last 2 or 3 generations, 30 to 40 years. And the reason for it has been a weakening in the supports that children formerly enjoyed in their family and in their community.
Well, let's talk about that, because of course we all think, yes, it takes a village to raise a child, and we don't have the village anymore. But you all are saying something very different. You're saying this biologically affects the kids because we may be hardwired in our brains to need it. And I want to talk about the fact that we've thrown drugs at this problem, but an awesome array of scientists in this study have now changed. You're saying, as I understand it, Dr. Kovner-Klein, that among kids there is this chemical need, perhaps to have actual religion in their lives, some religion that answers the biological need for meaning?
Well, what we're saying is that in children, that our children are starving for 2 basic needs, the need for deep connection with others, and the need for moral and spiritual meaning.
But the reason science is now in this is what? You have seen studies of hormone levels and stress levels actually go down in kids who've had some religious environment to give them this greater experience of meaning.
Well, there aren't those direct studies with children, with religious children's biochemistries, but we have a lot of studies that show that children who are involved in religious organizations and have spiritual devotion, that they seem to be somewhat protected from depression, anxiety, substance abuse. Not entirely, but it gives a protective effect.
And is this just organized religion as we know it, or is it spirituality in any form where you're really addressing with your kids God and the need for God? One figure you had in there, 96% of teens believe in God. Kind of a surprising thing when you think about teens, which indicates, Bill, that they need what in order to respond to that belief?
They need the rest of us to acknowledge that they even have that belief. And certainly it can be a difficult thing in our multicultural society with a wide range of beliefs. But since 96% of our young people do have that belief in God, it's something that family and community members need to be aware of and need to be willing to address.
And when it comes to parenting and connecting with kids, which of course is another key component, giving a connection that, again, you all believe really changes the chemistry inside a kid. What are you talking about, Dr. Carpenter-Klein? Are you talking about sitting and talking with kids? Is there any substitute for time with kids in forming those connections?
Well, a favorite doctor of mine once said, you can't have quality time with children until you have a certain amount of everyday quantity time with kids. So what we need is a particular form of engagement that is both warm and loving and also has expectations and limits. We think it works best when there are a number of generations involved, you know, parents, aunts and uncles, friends, neighbors, and when you have a community, what we call an authoritative community, working together to provide that structure, support, nurturing, affection, and moral and spiritual meaning.
You really believe at the end of the day that this could reverse this trend of emotional anxiety and depression among kids?
Well, there's no doubt there's empirical evidence to back it up, Diane. And when you think about it, too, think of the social supports that young people receive from the number of people in their congregation. Think about how they're able to develop coping mechanisms because of their spiritual beliefs. And also not to rule out if they believe there's something higher than themselves guiding their lives, that can be a positive influence as well.
Well, as I said, it's going to be something that parents have to address in a new way when you realize it actually has a physical, biological effect on the brain of your child. Religion and connection. We thank you for the new study and for coming on this morning.
Thanks.
When we come back, it's right.